I am going to rant about the Wuthering Heights movie. And I know that everybody and their mother has already talked about this movie. It has gotten all of the hate that it deserves. But the other day I walked into the library and I saw the Wuthering Heights novel by Emily Bronte with the cover, with the poster of the movie. I just knew that I had to make a video because I realized the hate was not enough. I think that one criticism that I have about the movie that I haven't seen made a lot is that the idea that Wuthering Heights is a love story is actually a very, very sexist interpretation of Emily Bronte's work that is as old as the novel itself. Emerald Fennell did not do some groundbreaking, revolutionary retake of Wuthering Heights. She literally continued the legacy of rewriting Emily Bronte's work as a love story because it was just believed that women could not write about anything else but love or romance. So, if you live in a cave, Wuthering Heights is a movie directed by Emerald Fennell. It came out in 2026. It is like the 10th or 15th adaptation of the novel by Emily Bronte that was published in 1847. And this novel by Emily Bronte is considered one of the greatest Gothic masterpieces of English literature. So that's part of the reason why, when it was announced that there was going to be an adaptation, everybody was kind of suspicious of how it was going to be made because it's a really great novel, but it's also a very complicated one and it's very easy to mess up. Here's the thing about me. I don't care about accuracy. I don't care about perfect one-to-one adaptations. I don't need Harry Potter's eyes to be green like in the novel. I don't need Katniss to be less annoying. I think that the movies are this new, fresh experience that are supposed to help you be immersed in the literary universe. So it's more about how you feel than what is actually said on the screen, right? But my issue is that what if this was also gotten wrong? So when I went to the theater and I watched the Wuthering Heights movie, I was very confused by all the kissing and smooching that was happening on screen because I had read the novel 3 weeks before and I could remember none of that. What I remembered from the Wuthering Heights novel is that everybody sucked, everybody is so annoying, and everybody hates themselves and each other. That's what I remembered. I remember people hating what somebody else did 10 years before and decided that they were going to ruin over their children and their grandchildren as a consequence of that. I don't remember Catherine begging Heathcliff to come into her house so that she can have an affair because her husband is too nice, I guess. That's not what I remember. So after I watched the movie, completely unrelated, I picked up a book that was in my reading list for a very long time, and it's called How to Suppress Women's Writing by Joanna Russ. And the amazing thing about this book is that it was published in 1984. So you cannot even accuse the writer of just jumping on the trend of hating on this new adaptation of the Wuthering Heights movie. In 1984, she was writing about how movie adaptations constantly get Wuthering Heights wrong. And the reason why they constantly get Wuthering Heights wrong is because movie adaptations interpret the Wuthering Heights novel through the lens of the dominant male critique of Wuthering Heights that existed for over a century and just take it for granted. When Wuthering Heights, the novel, came out, it was 1847 and the author was anonymous. Nobody knew that Emily Bronte wrote it. It was published under the name Ellis Bell. And Ellis Bell is not really a male name, but it's not also a female name. So everybody just assumed it was a guy. So I have the quotes from the book in front of me right now of what the male critics were saying about the book at the time. Carol Oman, literary critique. The novel is powerful and original. Its essential subject was taken to be a representation of cruelty, brutality, violence, wickedness in its most extreme forms. Reviewers were variously displeased, inclined to be melancholy, shocked, pained, anguished, disgusted, and sickened. But a number allowed the novel to be the work of a promising, possibly great new writer. And then we have Mercy Edwin Whipple for the North American Review, saying that the author was a spendthrift of malice and profanity, and called Heathcliff bestial, brutal, indeed monstrous. George Washington Peck of the American Review says that the book's language is that of a Yorkshire farmer or a boatman or frequenters of barrooms and steamboat saloons. Basically, everybody at the time saw Wuthering Heights as this really hardcore novel about ego, obsession, vengeance, really brutal topics written in the Victorian era. But when in 1850, 2 years after Emily Bronte's passing, it was revealed that the writer was not a man, Alice Bell, but an ambiguously a woman called Emily, overnight the reception changed. Emily Bronte was no longer the genius that Alice Bell was. She no longer evoked a sense of derangement and horror at the themes of her novel. Instead, she was just a lonely spinster in her room writing fantasies of love and romance that she did not herself know. Sidney Dobell of the Palladium highlights the youthfulness of the author and compares Emily to a bird fluttering its wings against the bars of its cage. The North American Review, which 3 years prior had referred to Emily as a spendthrift of malice and profanity, now found that the book's peculiarity or strangeness mirrors the distorted fantasy of the writer's life, which was isolated and deprived. Joanna Russ says that Wuthering Heights was transformed from a powerful, realistic novel by a writer to a fantasy by a lonely spinster. And I just think that is so interesting because we still see this to this day. Well, this woman, she couldn't write about horrible things. She couldn't write about abuse. She probably wasn't writing about trauma. She was trying to write a romance between Catherine and Heathcliff, and everything else is just secondary. Everything else are just accessories to help the main romantic narrative. But that's just so insulting to Emily. Like, Emily herself did not know what she was writing. Like, she forgot to include the kissing scenes or the smooching scenes or the affair. Like, she accidentally made Catherine and Heathcliff these insufferable, hateful people that you just cannot root for. So we have to change the story in order to make Wuthering Heights more sympathetic to the audience. We need them to root for Catherine and Heathcliff. We need them to root for their love. When nobody stops for a second and asks themselves, wait, did Emily Bronte want the audience to root for Catherine and Heathcliff? Are you supposed to like them? Are you supposed to sympathize with them? Because when I read the novel, I did not sympathize with them. I hated them. I thought they were annoying. I didn't care that Catherine died. And if you think this is a spoiler, it isn't, because the book is over 2 generations. It's set over 40 years. You're not just supposed to care about Catherine and Heathcliff. There's like 15 other people in this book, So that kind of pissed me off. Because Joanna Russ, she says it so much better than me. She said, a woman cannot write about evil like a coarse Yorkshire boatman. Therefore, she did not. Therefore, the novel must be a love story and a self-consistent monster. This view of Wuthering Heights must perforce find Heathcliff's sadism and the story of the second generation, Cathy Linton and Harton Earnshaw, embarrassing. The 1939 film with Merle Oberon and the handsome young Laurence Olivier agreed with Thomas Moser. They lit Olivier beautifully, deleted his cruelty, and drastically compressed the last half of the novel. TV Guide for the Week of July 24, 1978 went even further, calling the film Emily Bronte's haunting tale of the tragic romance between a materialistic girl and a proud stable boy, a masterpiece. And this trend continued for so many movie adaptations. I think that there's only the first movie that came out in 1920, which was a silent film, that covered the second generation. All the other movies cut the second half, make Cathy and Heathcliff more likable so that you avoid feeling uncomfortable and disturbed by the fact that these are horrible people, especially Heathcliff, obviously. I mean, Heathcliff is way worse than Catherine. He abuses his wife, he abuses his son, he abuses everybody. He's just this monster, really. And obviously, you pity his child self, but you do not pity him. So what is Jacob Elordi doing here? In the 2026 movie adaptation, Heathcliff is this white, handsome man, instead of the racially ambiguous boy whose uncertain origins are at the root of his abuse, exclusion, and desire for vengeance in the novel. The very central piece which drives the novel's narrative forward was taken away. It seems like the story of Wuthering Heights only exists to accommodate the romance between Heathcliff and Catherine and nothing else. My real issue with this is that we are depriving female artists of a legacy. It is so incredibly rare for a female artist, whether she's a writer, a painter, a poet, any form of art, to not only mark the consciousness of her time, but to be allowed posteriority, to not be wiped out from the annals of history. Yet, time and time again, we fail these women. We desecrate their work by trusting their visions to the sexist interpretations made of their art by their male peers. My question is, how is it revolutionary, experimental to recreate a version of Wuthering Heights, which has been made again and again and again, rather than actually following the word of the author, which has been ignored up until now? To this day, Wuthering Heights is still being sold as a tragic romance. There is tragedy in Wuthering Heights. I do not see much romance. You wouldn't say that 1984 is a love story because there's a couple in it. You are overriding the original author's intent and message for what? So I personally believe that we should not be allowed to hide under the mantle of creative liberty and modernization when we distort the legacy that somebody else has so painstakingly crafted. I do believe that creative reimagination is good, and I think it's healthy. I mean, think of all the thousands of versions of Little Red Riding Hood, Cinderella, Romeo and Juliet, but I believe that it's dangerous to do this to a woman's work when the arts world is still so male dominated and female voices are still spoken over so that we do not challenge the status quo. There were a billion ways to make Wuthering Heights without making Wuthering Heights, you know? You didn't need to use the name Wuthering Heights. I'm sure there's 100 new adult novels about a rich lady and her sassy servant, okay? You can probably adapt any of them. They would be huge, especially with the names attached to this movie. So that was the end of my video. It was a complaint. I promise that I'm actually a very positive and happy person. I'm planning to make more videos in the future, more literary reviews, book recommendations, complaining about things that I don't like. So if you want to watch more, I heavily recommend that you subscribe to this channel. And thank you so much for watching. See you next time. Bye bye.
She's a disgrace to humanity, and she's a disgrace to women who are actually beautiful and classy, and she just doesn't have the vernacular that she thinks she possesses. Somebody lied to her several times and told her that she was fly, hot, and sexy and beautiful, and she's nothing like that. She's nothing of the sort.